All right. So as far as we're going, as far as roadmap and what we need from the community, and I guess the question is really what um, the community wants to offer at this point. We're kind of at a natural breaking point slash not breaking point, if you will. And so it's really a matter of what we want to happen. So as far as what we got going on right now is the more formal definition of what the center of excellence is and assets it will maintain and what it will do. Down to we need to rename Actio. We've been calling it Actio as far as the product. Um, and we're going to have a naming process to go through for that down the road. Um, but we still need to do that definition. I showed you, kind of the whole breakout. I could show that to you again. I can go to those slides, but basically the assets need to get to a center of excellence owned location. So right now, although it is all open source, it's been on Lextigo equipment and Lextigo owned software. So the new software which I've already passed on what the endpoints are is actually commissioned, and most of it will probably be moved over, to be honest, within the next week. So I would expect by the end of August full access capability. But this involves Git, Jira. We do use Confluence. We do use Miro. Website development is the lowest on the list. We basically had to put something up because Atlassian gives free use to open source projects. And so it was just one of the requirements. There had to be a website. So that's literally the only reason there's one that's up and running right now. It's got minimal information on it. So at some point we need to round all that out, but that'll also happen more during the definition of what it is that we're really going to be doing. Um, the work that is on the roadmap right now is the performance metrics. So if you guys recall, we did some performance metrics right at the very beginning, where we proved out what we could perform, and then we went into the mode of making full functionality. So we never actually did any new performance tests and performance tuning. And we've got a project going that'll handle the performance metrics as well as getting us the sizing and things like that. That will be underway shortly. To be honest, if there are suggestions or ideas around how to do that, that's something that you could reach out to Foley, Johannes Foley, to talk about, because I know there's obviously been a lot done on the performance side of things. We are really focused on implementations. We have another fraud group going that has some rather high profile members, and we're going to try to convince them that they should be our guinea pigs, they should be our testers. And that leads us to the improvement of the implementation documents. So if they do agree to be our testers, we have documentation right now, but the process of working with them in multiple environments with multiple types of systems will in fact flesh out the documentation and make it much better. So specifically, we need to work on the journey to deploy, the journey to manage, and how to modify the system. To modify the system, by modify, I mean how to write my own PPA adapter, or how to write a rule that's beyond basic, if you will. For that matter, how to write a rule in AI and incorporate it into the system. So that's what we really mean by modify. But we're going to be focusing on that. How do we deploy it? How do we manage it? And how do we modify it? By the end of the month, you guys will all be able to do a push button CI/CD implementation it's in an Azure environment at the moment, in Azure, and get it up and running. We're converting the GitHub and like I said, we're in the process right now. We've already produced some training materials, and we will produce more. The first steps will basically be videos, very similar to the journey that Moduloop has gone through, where things were videos and basic documentation before they became, official courses and things like that. It'll be the same type of concept. And again, like I said, we're looking at implementations where hopefully we're testing with multiple companies, and it's their data, their systems, their variations on a theme that will help produce these case studies and documentation from this. And hopefully some of these will become real implementations that stay live. So that is the big thing that we're working on right now. This really is our roadmap. I've got some more slides that I can show as far as how things are going. But are there any questions, as far as that, as far as what it is that we're planning on doing?
How can we support you, Greg?
Okay, so um, here's information on the access. I'll go ahead and give you this to upgrade, and this is what we've got. How can you support me? I need subject matter experts. So, in particular, the biggest types of experts, and this should be coordinated through Foley, would be at the moment would be the DevOps people. I would love subject matter experts that are experts in fraud to work on, but this is a rather complex system. We have the ETL framework, just the data framework alone is a project by itself, to be quite honest. Um, and so we need those type of experts. We need to identify customers for engagements. So is Stitzelworks interested in any of these types of things? Are you aware of anybody that perhaps wants to be an OEM? Because the approach we're taking with this is that the customers are varied. This isn't like Mojaloop in that it touches a lot of different types of things or can work for many different types of things. So an NGO may use it to deal with supply chain fraud, for example. All that is changing out what the adapter is at the front, what systems it connects to, and the data, as well as then writing rules that are specific to them and typologies that's specific to that. Otherwise, the entire framework stays, the same. So I would say that we're interested in, whomever makes sense as far as customers and working with people to find those customers. We're interested in proving out whether or not they would make a good customer. The example I just gave on working with an NGO, maybe it's not practical because maybe say they're using Microsoft Dynamics and they're already using the fraud components that are available in Dynamics. So maybe they won't deal with that. But that is the type of thing that we need is SMEs, the DevOps types of people, and help with that. And then we're eventually going to need, but I'm not going to work on it right off the bat. We're going to need. You guys have been doing a lot of work on how to go to multiple cloud platforms. Right now, we just wanted to get this thing working. We go to Azure. So we do go to Kubernetes. We can, in fact, run this down on a very small device, like say a Raspberry Pi, not very well. But we can run this on a very small implementation of Kubernetes. So I heard Miller earlier say um, we really weren't necessarily using Kubernetes correctly or the way that it can be. I took from that we're not using it as natively in Mojaloop as possible. We are using it very natively. Um, so any help along those lines, for that matter, the folks we have are very good with it. So we know this from the interaction that we've had amongst each other, that these folks are quite competent. And again, Foley is the resource for those types of things. So I'm going to share this what I've got coming up. There's going to be a pitch later on today that is a combination of the deck that you saw and then ends with this call to action, right? Where I'm going to be talking to this group. I'm going to say, we need your real life testing, your data, your systems, your needs. You're a perfect fit for this. Matt's going to explain more how this could potentially work, and then Matt will hop in. But what we're trying to drive to is to where we would do a convening that looks roughly like this. And we're hopeful that it will be in September, but who knows, the people we have in mind may not want to do a convening. And that's advice that maybe we need help with. But on day two, we actually plan on giving everybody their own little sandbox, letting them generate a system live for themselves and letting them play with the config and the setup. All right. And then we intend to, on day three, where they walk through, a formal, how do you write good test case? What are the test case? These people were already organized by groups. And then they would report that out on day four. And we end with a workshop scenario where we basically say, okay, now we walk them through mapping out their journeys. What are their options for installations? So direct Kubernetes, is it Docker? Is it what? The needs for PPA to identify roughly the needs. And we're not planning on doing the whole definition here, obviously. But you would need to make these kind of adjustments to an adapter to pull in, your information. Identifying the sources of the data while making, high-level ETL plan, because that's critical to stuff like this. And then we'll report that out. So, and they would leave with, in essence, a very high straw man plan of how something like this could work, and then hopefully we would just continue to drive this forward. So that's what we go on. That's what we've got going on. What do we need? We don't really need any help on the coding side right now. It's code complete. We do expect there'll be some modifications on the performance tuning, but we do think that's just going to be tuning and configuration. It's not going to be much in the way of coding, if any. And really, Foley is the main point of reference for that. Myself as well. I'm just Greg at frms.io, and Foley is Johannes at frms.io, and I'll put that up. But that's what we plan to do.
Thanks, Greg. There is a question in the chat from Nee asking about timelines.
Okay, so timelines as far as being able to implement and things like that, it's already ready. It works. It's code complete. I'm sure that's the reason we want to do implementations right now. Is we need to work out any kinks. It works and works well with test data, but we all know, as they say about like battles, a good battle plan is a great battle plan until the minute the battle starts, right? Until the actual thing starts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the same thing that's going to happen here. So we need to, basically start the trials by error, types of phases. But it is functional. And I apologize that we've not really given people much in the way of access at the moment, but we were on a mission to get done in the amount of time. And we'll work now on making it more open. The typologies are in fact going to be managed separately. We haven't figured that out. That's part of this defining the COE. But basically, this is a Jira and Confluence type system, and GitHub. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Greg. That's really good.
Hopefully, I got you back on schedule too. Okay.
Yeah, well, we're only 45 minutes late, so it's not bad.
All right. I'm around other than Matt and I have to be in this other meeting. I think it's at 4. So, but I'll be around as much as I can for you guys. So.
Cool. Thank you. Thank Greg. Next on the list was merchant payments, which is back to me. I mentioned in the previous days of the convening that we're doing a lot of work about getting money into people's wallets. So obviously, the obvious way is P2P, but we did significant amount of work in the last PI and are continuing to in this PI around bulk. The only reason that it's not one of the candidate work streams today is that bulk is so far advanced that the efforts is sort of well planned for and support isn't really needed. But that's a classic way of getting money into people's accounts. And similarly, the work that we want to do around digital identity integration is, again, all about support for G2P services, ECT, and therefore, again, getting money into people's accounts through salary runs or through government payments or through NGO payments, COVID support, whatever it may be. It's all about getting money into people's accounts or people's wallets. Once it's there, what we really don't want them to do is cash out, because really, what is the point then? So we need to support as many possible ways in which people might use the money in their wallet without cashing out. I mean, obviously, there's bill payments, school fees, medical fees, all of those things, and that's really important as well. So integration with billers, but merchant payments, I would argue, is probably the most important of all. If you think about people's day-to-day transactions, in many countries that we're dealing with, particularly in rural areas, refrigeration is rare, principally because electricity supplies are intermittent. And therefore, people are buying fresh food every day, potentially up to about 2-3 transactions, often with stall holders per day. So that's looking at maybe 20 plus transactions a week just on that before you consider anything else. And transactions are a major source of revenue for, obviously, the mobile money services. And so we need to be able to support that in an interoperable, interconnected way as thoroughly as we can. Now, in the previous PI, we did a report out of the work that had been done by myself, Justice, and Lewis in the merchant payments space. Sad to say, Justice then chose to focus entirely on fraud, moving away from merchant, and Lewis, of course, has left the community as a whole entirely. So consequently, there's been a lack of progress on merchant payments. I would like to show where we were previously. If I can just find the right window. There we are. So we've developed this merchant payments ecosystem, which obviously had the customer front end, a merchant payments extension module, a merchant registry module, and the Mojaloop Hub itself. We have done significant work in defining each of these. We had developed a merchant backlog, for example. We've done a significant amount of work on the use cases, and we were looking at the various features that the merchant backlog needed. We hadn't refined any of this, so significant work is needed to really refine the backlog and to drive it down to the next level of detail before it can be submitted for development by anyone at all. We need significant support there. And I would definitely be hoping that we get support from some of the systems integrators, maybe some of these service operators in this. I personally think merchants is an extremely important use case, as I've said. And it is a great sadness to me that it stalled in the last PI. So I think that's all I want to say, bearing in mind my comment that we're already 45 minutes late. We're now 50 minutes late. So are there any questions? No? That's great. I'm glad you all support merchant payments. Thank you. Finally, the last candidate workstream was vNext. And I sent a message to you, Pedro, and to Miguel, asking if one of you might be prepared to talk about this and support for vNext. Is that Pedro? Are you there? Yes, you are there. So,
I am.
Yeah. Thank you. So
yes, I have
sharing and excuse me a moment and hand over to you, Pedro, if I may.
Thanks, Paul. Yes, well, I have to start with an apology for not having nice slides. I was assuming that we would be continuing the same logic from last convening, where we would not be using voting slots for vNext because it spans multiple PIs. However, that's a wrong assumption from my end, so I apologize for that. However, I'm not going to lose the opportunity to explain what we're doing again and how anyone can help us. So hopefully you still remember vNext's first day presentation. And I'm going to refresh a bit of our objective, the plan that we have and where we are, and then terminate this talk with what we actually need. So to recap, our objective is to produce the next version of the modular platform. And this is no easy task. A few PIs ago, we executed the performance and scalability POC. This was a very deep architectural and technical work that Miguel and I did for a bit of time. And we concluded that the current architecture needs a revolutionary enhancements to be prepared for the future scalability requirements. So essentially, the point is we can still make improvements today. But we know that in the future, as we go to the next level of scalability requirements, we will need to change some of the foundation that we have. So with that in mind, we took the opportunity to create a reference architecture. And this would help us identify what would be the perfect architecture for the future. Essentially, having the reference architecture is the first step to having a very solid foundation for a technical roadmap. And what this allows us to have is that vision of, it's almost like a Christmas list. Request is very naive, but it is very effective in the information it provides. It basically is, what would be the perfect design, the perfect architecture that we would produce if we had unlimited resources. And as naive as this sounds, this is really helpful because we then can put that design on the wall and then say, this is what good looks like. So every decision, every technical and architectural decision that we make from now on Michael is complaining about Christmas. So every architecture decision that we make from now on, we can have this framing for that decision. Is the change that we're trying to introduce? Is the new functionality that we're starting to build or that we need to build something that we can build and shape it so that it looks at the end like that reference architecture? Or is the change that we're making not going to look at all like the target architecture? It's not going to bring us closer to that target architecture, to that vision, and then we have to justify it as a tactical decision, which is perfectly fine. The point being, either we make changes and invest the little resources that we have in going towards that end goal that we have discussed, that we have designed and created as a community, or we assume that some of the things that we're going to be doing are going to shift resources away from that future vision, but they are needed for some tactical reason right now. And there's plenty of examples of that. I ramble a lot about the question, should we be doing some functionality? Should we build something right now, or should we wait for vNext? The point that I tried to make here is not specifically about the actual development that's being discussed. The point is, I'm trying to ingrain in our minds that question, that doubt, and that decision-making process every time that we use resources. Is this something that we really need right now so we can make a concession in terms of architecture? Or is this something that would probably be better fit for the vNext release? So this is the objective and the how we got to the place where we are. What are we doing now? We're building that next version of Moduloop. And this is a very hard exercise because we're trying to build that perfect vision with the practicality of and the reality of not having enough resources. So what we have is a build plan that we think is realizable, it's deliverable. And our build plan is composed of 3 phases. The first phase is the alpha phase. What we mean is that when we're building the alpha phase, we're focused more on the architectural aspects of the platform foundation and less on the functional aspects. So we only implement the main use cases for each area. So for example, if we're doing participant lifecycle management, we're only going to do as much as we need to have participants in the system and to test some of the, for example, make a checker mechanisms, because that's a foundation aspect that we have. Also the authorization mechanisms. So we're now working on this alpha version. After that, we will move to a beta version. A beta version, by definition, is something that's closer to production. And what we'll do when we are finished with alpha and start beta is we'll change the focus of what we're doing. We're going to stop doing the hard architecture design of the foundation, because hopefully by then, well, not hopefully, that's the plan. By then, those hard design choices of the foundation are settled, they are stable, and we are going to start putting the meat on the bone. So essentially, we're going to start building the other functionality, the other use cases that didn't make the alpha version because they were not essential for us to prove the point of the architecture that we were building in the alpha. And obviously, that's going to include all of the use cases that our platform supports, all of the functionality, including non-happy path use cases, failure modes, and the typical exceptional scenarios. So this is the beta version. Effectively, what we're going to aim for is feature complete, non-productive ready, not productive ready, but feature complete. Once we have this, and by the way, this beta version will be the first one that is meant to be deployed and experimented with. So once we release the beta version, what we expect and what we really need is for everyone that is able to deploy a beta version, and with that deployment start to experiment with it and provide feedback so that we can improve the beta version. Once we release this beta version and we start having feedback, we'll start the last phase before going to production, which is ironing out the issues and the small bugs that we have that we didn't discover during the beta phase. And for that, we will need a lot of help from the community, not from the development perspective, but from the perspective of users that need to implement this, DevOps operators, anyone that can fiddle and install the beta version and start providing feedback about what's not good, what needs to be enhanced, and so on, so that we can iron those things out until we produce a production-ready version. So this is the build plan. As I mentioned, we are at the alpha phase, which means we're focusing very hard on that foundational aspects of the architecture and including only the minimum use cases in terms of high-level functionality. And well, what do we need? Well, as always, we need developers. So anyone with TypeScript and Node.js experience that has 2 or 3 days a week to spare, please reach out. We really need help, and you're more than welcome. And I'm not trying to be picky with the time demand. The problem that we have is that at this stage, we're developing those foundations, and every little task that we have is already big. So we don't have small things to change. Everything is always on the big side because it impacts the architecture. It impacts the foundation. So you change something very small in one side, and then you realize that that requires a change somewhere else. So we don't have small tasks to do. We have big tasks at this moment. It's just the way it is. This is why alpha phases for the foundation are so important, and they require a close-knit team, dedicated resources that can work constantly and very focused in this task. Later during the beta development, this is when we are going to have a lot more smaller tasks that will not require architecture consequences, or it will not affect the architecture as we build them. So what we expect is that right now we need a bit of involvement from developers, and we do need a lot of help from developers. So if you have significant 2 or 3 days of time, please help out. If you only have a bit of time, a few hours a week, reach out anyway. We'll try to find out something for you to do. But know that as soon as we get to the beta version, to the beta development stage, we will have a lot more smaller tasks that need contribution. We'll also need a lot more testing. So once we get to the beta, we will need a lot of help with small tests and hopefully A lot of the folks that don't want to commit with time will be able to help us during the beta phase, because that's where we will have a lot of small tasks to be done, and anyone can pick up a small task and then just do it when they have time. So this is a strategic decision of the plan that we're enforcing. Our point is to get over the alpha version as soon as possible and then start opening development to pretty much everyone and realizing the value as soon as possible, so that once we get to the beta version, people can start installing this and deploying it and seeing how it works and seeing the benefits. And then we can start opening up the development team to pretty much anyone that has a few hours a week. So this is the ask. Well, two asks. First, decision-making process. Let's please consider if something that is a big development can be slotted in the vNext development, because we need the resources, and anything that shifts significant resources to the vNext will help us deliver vNext faster. And I know this is a chicken and egg problem. And again, I'm not trying to shift resources away from stuff that has to be done right now. But I'm doing my role. I'm leading the vNext development, so I really need help on the development side of things. So that's our ask for the community. If you have time, please reach out. We need all of the help that we can get. And if you only have a few hours of time, reach out anyway, and we'll try to find some tests and some smaller tasks that you can commit to. That's it. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Pedro.